Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Christine Anderson. For those of you who don't know me, I am a chiropractor in Los Angeles, California for over 30 years. And I have a family practice. I'm board certified in pediatrics and pregnancy and do functional neurology to help kids with all sorts of issues. And I see families. And, one of the things that I love helping people do is achieve their dreams, their goals, whatever they're here to be on this earth for, their passions, whatever it may be. And I can't remember actually, Constance, how you found me. I know it was a referral, but I'll find that out later. But Constance found me. And I also can't remember how long we've been working together, but it's been a while. And so Constance has come on today to share with you her story and exploits of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And I know she's still like, whoa, I can't believe it, because she just did this back in December. And I believe it was in October you came to me and said, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, right?
Yes, it was.
And you said, I'm going to do that in December.
You said, are you sure? Are you ready?
I thought that would take more training, but apparently not, because she's done it. She's here to tell us about it. So that means, she actually did go and do it. So I'm going to turn this over to Constance, who will tell you a little about herself. And then she'll start to talk about her story, about what this involves, from how this even came up that she was going to do this, what was going on, what was her motivation, and of course the experience of being on the mountain. And she's going to share some photos with you that are really inspirational. And I just love this. I absolutely love this anyway, but especially in this time when everybody's locking down and Constance goes, no, I'm going to go and I am going to have an adventure. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live my passion. Anything can happen to us at any time. A patient just shared with me today, a young artist, I think she was in her 30s, who went out to watch the moon last night. I don't know what happened, but she had some accident and ended up dying. Yeah. So obviously these things are, don't occur very often, thank goodness, and it's sort of freak incidences, but this just belies the fact that we don't ever know when our time is up. We don't know what's around that corner. We could walk down the street or go out to look at the moon. We don't have, we have this, illusion of safety given us, but you went out there and you lived your life. And I can't wait till you get to the park, because, I know a little bit about this. I saw the pictures where she really did get challenged on an aspect of this trip that she had no idea. And I saw those pictures, a little bit of a precarious part. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I know
And,
exactly.
you're there confronted with it. And it was like, do I do this or do I not? So anyway, take it away, Constance. Let us know a little bit about you.
Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to speak and share my experience with you. My name is Constance. I have been living in LA now for the past 13, 14 years. I was actually introduced to you by a friend of mine whose name is Rachel. I've been friends with her for a very long time. And she said, oh, I go to this chiropractor. She's great. Her name is Dr. Chris, and she's just so cool and amazing. You have to check her out. And at the time, it was kind of you were a lifesaver, because I was going through some things with my health, and I found a lot of relief when I started to work with you. And it's been about 10 years now since
Wow.
I've been a patient of yours. So it's a really long time.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a really long time. I'm an artist and I work in the digital marketing space. And I've been doing that for over a decade now. And, like I said earlier, I've been a patient of yours for a really long time. I think it's only in the past year or in the past 2 years that I've been really consistently coming to you, being locked in and being under quarantine and a lot of things coming up. I know this is happening universally to everybody. I just felt like it was important to maintain a consistent schedule of, physical maintenance, and coming to you has been one of the things that I do on a regular basis. Like I just have certain things in my rotation, and getting a chiropractic adjustment is one of those things. So around September of 2020, I made a decision to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, I was asked to do this by one of my best friends, and initially I was not really interested in going because, in my mind, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're locked down, countries have shut down, nobody's letting Americans in. How do you think we're gonna actually do this? And this thing is spreading like wildfire. So I was like, no, you do your thing. I'm gonna be here locked in my house and safe. But I started thinking more and more about it. And I said, well, it's been quite a tremendous year. I'm turning 40. And I usually hate celebrating my birthday, but I wanted to do something meaningful and special and interesting. And I also am of a mind right now where I feel like, rather than throwing a party or getting material things, which I don't find satisfying, I just want more interesting experiences. And going to Mount Kilimanjaro just seemed to me like, having this big birthday where it's a unprecedented year. So much has happened. What a great way to close it, by doing something so extraordinary and special. The other thing too is that, once the decision was made, I had to start mentally preparing myself for this trip, and also physically preparing myself for the trip. So, I was working out more often, walking every day, going on hikes every weekend with the friends with whom I was traveling. So there was a lot of physical activity happening as well. But once, October and November started to come around, I started to have a lot of anxiety about taking the trip, and all of these external voices started to come in of like the news, the numbers are going high, LA's become a hot zone. Stay in your home, don't go anywhere, don't spread this. Any kind of discomfort in my body, I would go into a panic of, oh my gosh, is it COVID? Any kind of cough, like just a cough to clear my throat, just a tickle in my throat, I'd get into a panic about, is this COVID? And the closer I got to the trip, the more things started to happen in my body, like, my toes being weird, or my knees or my ankles being weird, or just strange things started to happen. And I would just ask myself, like, am I preparing too hard? Am I working out too hard in preparation for this trip? Is that what's happening? Or, is my body rejecting the idea of going on this trip, and maybe this is a warning that I should not be doing this? Like, I shouldn't be traveling internationally in the middle of a pandemic. That's a crazy thing to do. But the trip had already been paid for and everything was already in motion. So I was just in a really, like, very concerning place. So I came to you on one of our sessions, and I was just giving you an inventory of everything that was going on, not just physically, but also mentally. And you said to me, you need to come in and do an NET. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll try that, since, I'm taking all these supplements and none of them seem to be helping. And I because I'm feeling it physically, I think this is a physical ailment. And so when I came to that session with you and
Well, hang on, let's back up a minute. I want people to realize you came in and you were like, oh my God, okay, I'm leaving. I'm supposed to leave in a few days. I think it was like a week. I'm supposed to leave in a week.
Yeah.
And my foot is hurting. I didn't do anything to it. I don't know why. I mean, you're talking so calmly now.
But like it was like you move into a house, and when you bought the house, it was perfect. It looked great. Everything was in great condition. And then you move into the house, and all of a sudden, like, the tap starts to drip, or like you start to see cracks in the ceiling, or just things just slowly start to fall apart, and you're like, wait, why? where did this come from?
Right.
But the things were adding up. One day it'd be my knee, and then the next day it'd be my knee and my toes. And then the day after that it'd be my knees, my toes, and my ankles. And I'd just be like, I have never experienced this before, where it
Right.
just felt like so many things were happening all at once, coming from nowhere.
And interesting, it would be a part of your body that you absolutely needed to
to
do,
actually climb the mountain.
like
So
if,
things were happening with my legs, with my feet.
right, if you
But
can't walk,
I do need to walk to actually accomplish this goal. So why are these,
right.
parts of my bodies?
And like the first thing I said when you started talking about that these were new things, I was just like, you're trying to sabotage yourself. Self-sabotage. And do you know how common this is for people who have this big, scary sort of goal really far out of their comfort zone? They really want to do it. It's exciting, it's adventurous, it might be life changing, and you can talk about that because you've been through it. But all the stuff comes in there, all those voices, like you said, first of all, the fear with COVID, and then, are you crazy? You can't, you're not in shape, you're going to be 40, all
Do
the
I have enough
negative.
time? Am I crazy to try and be doing this in 4 months when
Right.
people take a year to prepare?
Yeah.
Who do I think I am? All of this.
So this is what happens to people really on a daily basis, no matter what, when they try to go, a millimeter out of their comfort zone. And there you are going like way across the state, or across the country and beyond. So it's not surprising to me, of course, because I've been doing this for a while. And so many people get to that point, and that's where they stop. They see it as an obstacle that can't be overcome. I won't be able to do it. So it really, kudos to you for looking at it. You were analyzing it. You were asking all the right questions. Is this the right thing? But I think in your gut, you really did want to do it, obviously, because you ended up doing it. And, it's funny how you made your way into me, just kind of like, ah,
Yeah, I was in a panic.
you were.
And
And that's okay.
for sure,
Because
for sure.
if you had
And
come in and blown it off and not really said anything to me, then I wouldn't have picked it up and been able to help you. So thank goodness you were in a panic.
yeah, I mean, things were happening. And I didn't tell you right away because they were kind of coming and going. And then in my mind, I also thought, you're overthinking this. It's not that serious. But when I wouldn't go away, and I finally told you, by then it was an accumulation of all of these
Right.
symptoms that were occurring, and I just couldn't manage the anxiety of like, I'm traveling in a week or a week and a half, and all of this stuff is happening. And this was an 8-day hike to climb this mountain. Am I even going to make it through day one?
Seriously. Yeah. No,
And
I mean, understandably to have those emotions. All right. So I said to you, I think NET can help. And NET, by the way, for people listening that aren't familiar, is Neuro Emotional Technique. And it's dealing with the blocked emotions that are stuck somewhere in the body. So it's sort of connecting the mind body. It's not, we don't have the disconnection right here. We're not floating heads. It's connected to the rest of us, and they're not separate. You can't separate them. So sometimes emotions will get stuck in the organ systems that may have been there for a very long time. Sometimes these programmings even go on early on in life, even before our conscious mind is registering them. So we don't know why we're feeling what we're feeling or why this is occurring, but it can rear its ugly head when you're in stressful situations. And the technique is non-invasive. It takes about a half an hour. Usually I can take care of things in one session, occasionally two, and very rarely three, or if there's like another layer that gets underlying in that, or if we start, diving down the rabbit hole and working on different issues. But it's really efficient because I'm not analyzing. It's not like when you go to a psychologist and I'm sitting there analyzing, why it happened and what went on. It's just kind of like, where's the emotion? What's the emotion? What's that image picture? Get that. I do some tapping on the back. Maybe there's a homeopathic remedy involved, and that's it. You go on your merry way. Simple as that. And it is really that simple, isn't it?
It is really, really that simple. I have had a couple of NAT sessions with you over the years, but I feel like this one was the most, I don't know if tangible is the word to use, but I'm going to say the most tangible because I saw immediate effects right away. And so to me, it felt like, oh, wow, all of these things were unearthed, but the physical ailment was gone. After I walked out of your office that day and I went home and I could feel none of the pain in my body. And the week after, when I was climbing, it was as if none of that had, none of the pain had ever happened.
Yeah.
And, in the past, I wasn't having that kind of intense physical reaction that I needed to address with NET, but this time I could really, really see it. And, it gave me renewed faith in the whole thing. Because sometimes it feels really abstract and intangible. And this time it was like, I went to you, we talked through a bunch of things, you did some tapping, I came home and I wasn't feeling any pain anymore. That to me was so immediate and so tangible. It was amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it can be like that. Sometimes when people are having different issues that, like you said, that aren't as tangible, they may not feel that specific effect. But especially if they are having like organ issues, like if you have a problem with your kidneys or liver, you're not necessarily going to feel like, oh, my liver, that feels great now. There might not be pain.
Right.
Or if you're working on, well, when you're working on, for instance, my daughter had a fear of driving and I did a session on her and then she was able to go get her driver's license. So that was tangible too. Most people feel lighter and freer and less stressed in general, but like you, if they have a certain source of pain, typically it does go away in that first session. So, I'm just happy I have this tool because not every chiropractor does this technique. And it's just so useful to have in my tool belt to deal with that emotional component of the subluxation, which is the effect on the body, on physically and chemically and biochemically and emotionally, everything tied in together. So I mean, I love it. I learned it many years ago when I knew I needed a tool. And there's other techniques out there, but this one really, I feel I can get right to it. Okay, so you had your pain, you came in, we did the NET, and take it from there.
We did the NET and it was about 30 minutes, like you said. And, I sat on your table, we talked about the different parts of my body that were being affected. And then you did some tapping. I did some deep breathing and then let it go. And I went home and I wasn't feeling all the pain and the aches that I was feeling when I walked into your office that day. So that was an incredible.
And then how about your anxieties?
The anxiety definitely diminished, but I think I completely overcame the anxiety when I actually went to Tanzania. I landed there and I really got a lay of the land. And as we started climbing, I started to understand, because part of the anxiety was like, I'm climbing a mountain. This is like a vertical structure. And so if I go all the way to the top and, I could fall and die. I mean, it's dramatic, but that's how I was thinking. Like, what if I fall and die? What if, altitude, the altitude is a very serious thing, and altitude sickness is something to not be taken lightly. And so I was kind of concerned about that too. I was reading all kinds of articles and watching all kinds of videos on YouTube, and people would have testimonies about like, oh, people have died climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Like all of this was,
Can I ask you, did they have oxygen for you there?
They did. They did. They had it available. None of us had to use it. There was never a need for any of us to use it. And
Wow.
the way that the climb was scheduled, the reason why they spread it out 8 days is to acclimate us to the altitude. And that's why it takes so long. We could have probably shaved off a couple of days and been okay, but they stretched it that much to give us time. So we'd climb a certain distance and then come back a little bit, sleep at that level, the next day climb even higher, come down a little bit, sleep at that level until we reached the summit. That's how they basically structured it. And even the landscape itself, there weren't a ton of places where, I was free climbing, or it wasn't like all 8 days of scary climbing. A lot of the land was flat, a little hilly, but totally doable. And so when I saw that, it really reassured me of like, oh, I can do this. I love walking. I walk all the time. Like, hiking is my thing. To think that I could have stopped myself from having this experience because I didn't know what to expect and I was anticipating the worst, it just makes me sad that a lot of us spend our lives saying no to things out of this type of irrational fear without really giving it a chance,
You
and
know,
just
that is
putting
such a
ourselves out of the game.
yeah, no, that is such a good point to make. I really want to highlight that because instead of being in the present and being in the here and now about what's in front of us, either, a lot of us are ruminating about the past or worrying about a future that may never be. And so for me, when that occurs, if there's something that I'm just going to use, that I'm afraid of or I'm worried about, because I try not to use those negative terms because then it's like, or, I'm thinking about, and I go, okay, what if I do fall off the mountain and die? Is this still worth it to have this adventure? There's some things that are worth dying for. Or is dying the worst thing that can happen rather than, being safe in my chair, knowing full well that I could walk out my door here, walk down the street and have something happen to me, or get in my car and have something happen to me. Like, so this is what I usually do is think of the worst case scenario. Am I okay with that? And once I become okay with it, whether I'm using something like NET or there's aroma freedom technique I really like because you can kind of do that yourself. So I'll put in the description a link to what aroma freedom technique is as well, so people can have a look at that, just to know there's these different techniques out there. And forgetting about what's happening in front of us, what's happening in the now, and then going, okay, yes, those things might happen, but obviously I'm going to take care to make sure that they don't. And I'm sure the people on this expedition are going to take care to make sure that doesn't happen. But you are so right. There are so many people who look at that, have the fear, and say, yeah, you know what? That's okay.
Check out.
I'm going to check out. I'm going to live a safe life. Yeah. And if that's their path, that's their path. I can't fault people for where they are and what they're doing. But if you're listening to this, and that's not your path, and you're sitting here going, oh my gosh, I do that all the time, and I really want to stop doing that. Do you have any suggestions for them? What helped you to get over that anxiety to actually get to Tanzania where you had that epiphany, like, yeah, this is doable?
Well, I think it started from here and having my session with you, and the questions you just brought up are the exact questions you asked me when I came in for my session. And, kind of taking stock and questioning yourself in that way is really a good way to put things into perspective, because yeah, I could step outside and slip and fall and that'll be the end of my life. It could happen anywhere. Just as people are like, well, people have a fear of flying, but flying is less dangerous than driving. And we're on the freeways every day driving, right?
Yeah, well, especially in Los Angeles.
So really just thinking through, like, how can I really put this into perspective? And it's also always been my experience that whatever I thought was really, really bad, once I actually get down to giving it a try and giving it a chance, I realized it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It really wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and say, screw it, and just take a step forward. And for me, that's always been the thing, just having the courage to say yes. And, if something bad happens, then I think I'm strong enough to be able to handle it. And then once I get to that point, it's like, oh, this is okay. This isn't that bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was. The lesson here also from this experience was understanding how powerful the mind is and how tricky it is and how delusional we are. If we allow ourselves to get swayed by these kind of false stories that we create in our own minds and allow that to stop us from really living up to our full potential. I could have gone on this trip at a more convenient time, but again, part of my thinking was also, we've experienced a pandemic in 2020. I don't know if this is the end of the world. So I might as well live my life. I might as well just do this, take all the precautions and go have an experience that I've always wanted to have, or allow myself to have an experience that I think will be interesting and new and enriching to my life. What do we say? Like this whole hoarding mentality of like, I'm waiting for the perfect time. I'm waiting to have enough money, or I'm waiting to be enough or good enough to do something. Time is ticking, and we just have to have the courage to step forward and say, I'm going to do this, and actually do it and follow through with it.
Yeah, seize the day.
Yeah.
Who said that? Caesar? I don't know. Somebody said that. But no, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I think everybody's just push the pause button right now, waiting for I don't know what. Get up off your butts and make it happen. You've got to make it. You have to make your life happen. You can't wait for somebody to give you permission.
Well, and there's also out of the box ways of approaching things, like we're all working from home now. And for a lot of businesses, they didn't think that was possible. And yet we're finding innovative ways of meeting virtually, like we are right now on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I think people have really learned to be resourceful and figuring things out. If you can't get on a plane, you can rent a car and drive somewhere really cool, or
there's something, and it's there's going to be, I mean, yours was a literal Mount Kilimanjaro, but somebody's Mount Kilimanjaro may be completely different and may not even involve travel. But doing something, whether it's starting a new hobby, you can, YouTube videos, whatever you've had a yearning to do, your passion, your dream. And my goodness, if you don't have passions and dreams, then get some. I mean, seriously,
something to live for and look forward to.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I have too many. So for me, it's like, which one am I doing right now? I can't relate to those people who just are like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, figure it out. There's ways to figure that out too. Maybe I'll do something on that as well. Ways to.
And the thing too is, you have your whole life to figure things out. You're just constantly, I think we're just constantly figuring things out. The most important thing is to be engaged in that process and not just sit around and wait for something to happen. Like life is about figuring it out.
Yes.
Just start.
Just start. Put one foot in front of the other. Yeah. Get on that plane. I mean, if you got there to Tanzania, looked up and went, oh God, what did I get myself into? When you started and you were like, yeah, no, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So what? At least you got there. At least you went, whatever. Taking that first step, I think, is the hardest.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to Tanzania. No bit. You're like, whatever. I've got this. No problem. So tell us a little bit about those 8 days going up there.
Yeah. So,
and do you want to show pictures as you talk?
Oh, sure. I would love
that would be really cool, so everybody can get kind of a visual about what this all looked like.
Yes. So I got to Tanzania and spent about 10 days there. I had 1 day of rest before starting the actual climb. And so, there it is. And so the way that they do it is that every day you're walking a certain amount of hours, and the goal is to get you from one camp to another.
Is that like
So
between like three? I know you said to me like they estimated what it probably took the Sherpas to go there, but about how long were you walking each day?
about 8 hours.
Wow.
6 to 8 hours. 8 hours at the most intense. I think the shortest was probably 5 or 6 hours.
Wow.
And um, there's a saying in Tanzania when you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, that's a shot of the mountain, the summit of the mountain right behind me in the shot. There's a saying, they say pole pole, and this is what the guides say to you. And pole pole means slowly, slowly.
Hmm.
And part of the reason is a lot of people who come to this country to climb this mountain, some of them are people who are into extreme sports or adventurers. And then there's people who are just regular people like me, who just want to have a nice little adventure. And so they say, go slowly because you're probably not used to climbing and you're not used to climbing at this altitude.
Yeah.
And so the altitude can really have different types. Your body will have different reactions to the altitude. So some people are fine with it and other people, they get nausea, they get headaches, difficulty breathing. So they really encourage you to go slowly. You don't have to speed. You don't have to compete with the mountain. This is not a race. So don't think that you can finish a hike from one camp to another in 3 hours. It would take the porters that long to get from one place to another, but we were not the porters. They
Right.
do this all the time.
They do this
All the
like
time.
their life. So it's like, whatever. We're just
They're
going
incredible. They're just incredible. But we were taking, between 5 to 8 hours, walking slowly, taking lots of breaks, drinking lots of water,
and
taking lots of tea breaks. So this was one of our breaks from one camp to another. And as you're walking, you're just seeing this majestic landscape. And you'd see a different landscape every day. One day to actually start the climb, you go through a rainforest. So we spent a day and a half in the rainforest, and then we came to this kind of like barren land that only had rocks. And then sometimes you'd go to places where there were, these types of sparse plants. And then other places felt like you were in a Ridley Scott movie because it was just all rock face. Right. With interesting colors and shapes and textures. It was just incredible.
How cool is it there? I see you've got your sort of jacket and boots and hat on.
Yeah, so it can get pretty cold. But the reason why, when I look at these pictures, because I'm somebody who gets cold very easily, and so I had my parka in my luggage, but then I also had this kind of winter jacket combo that had a rain shell over it. And so I would alternate between what I'm wearing in this picture and when it started to rain, which would happen very frequently, I would put on the raincoat part of this little ensemble. The thing is though, because you're walking and you are exercising and your heart rate is up and you're hot, I was actually finding myself getting hot in the middle of the hike because, well, I'm actually exercising for 8 hours straight. And so my body is just active.
Yeah.
At nights though, it was unbelievably cold. Mm-hmm. I mean, so much so, in fact, that I slept in my ski pants, my parka, and I had like 3 layers underneath both top and bottom and my hat. Right. And I was still cold in the sleeping bag. So it got really cold at night.
With Tanzania, so you went in December, is that above the equator? I can't remember my geography of Africa.
Oh.
Is it considered in the northern hemisphere or the southern? Was it summer there or winter? You don't know.
It was warm. I mean, it was,
It
I
was.
don't know if they have summer or winter, but it was warm.
It was.
Once
Okay.
you do start climbing though, it
Right.
obviously.
Obviously, in the mountains, it's going to be colder. I was just curious. I'll have to look at that because I cannot.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it is close to the equator, but
Uh-huh.
don't quote me on that.
Don't worry, I won't hold you. Hold you to it. Yeah, I was wondering just because I do know as you go up in mountains, obviously it's going to get a little cooler or colder.
Yeah, yeah, and we had a lot of different weather, you know, very foggy. We had sleet, we had a lot of rain. Obviously, there was snow. Um, so this little structure here is called Lava Tower, and there was a lot of energy in this particular place. And by the time we got to this rest stop, I was so exhausted. I wanted to sit down and take a nap. And of course, all my guide was like, absolutely not. You cannot, cannot close your eyes. You cannot take a nap because it's very dangerous
Yeah.
at that altitude to not allow your body to rest properly before you actually go to sleep. So I heard some pretty horrific stories about, you know, people who didn't listen to some of the guidelines that were set by people who are experts at climbing this mountain. Like you can't really mess around when you're doing something like this.
Absolutely. Oh,
There's so much beauty, you know, snow-capped mountain, but when you go down to the town, it's hot. Like it felt like summer.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah, so gorgeous.
And like I said, we'd go up a certain altitude and then come down a little bit to rest, and then the next day go up a certain altitude and come down a little bit. And we did that every day until we reached.
And that makes sense to me with prepping the physiology to get used to those changes. So you know that all makes sense. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, it was very challenging doing this climb. You know, the altitude was tough. I was jet lagged. So if I had the opportunity to do this all over again, what I would do is actually spend a week there, get used to the environment before attempting to climb, because I just came in, had one day, and then I was climbing up, and so I didn't really have enough rest. They were feeding us a lot just to give us energy to do the climb, but there were just so many things that were going on in my body that were challenging, but it was all kind of physical of like, okay, it's taking the porters 3 hours to get there, but it's taking me 5 or 6. Well, you know, I'm not used to breathing at this altitude, so I have to be gentle with myself. And I can't compete with anybody because they have decades of experience, and this is my first time doing something like this. So it really.
I mean, I can only imagine. I climbed Mount Fuji. God, I don't even know how long ago. That's many years ago now, and we went up the day after it officially closed, so there were no facilities, so we had to take all our water, and it took us about 5 or 6 hours to climb up, and then about 5 to go down. We did it all in one day, and we didn't use any oxygen, but definitely I could feel tension at the back of my head. It wasn't quite a headache, but you know, it didn't help by carrying the backpack. And I couldn't imagine doing that and then getting up the next day and going, okay, you get to climb it again.
Do it all over again for 7 days straight.
Yeah.
And I'll also have you know, this was my first time camping. I've never camped before. I've never had the experience of like setting up a little tent and sleeping outside like that. This was the first for me. So it was a lot of new things happening, and I had to cope with a lot of it, but it was a great experience overall.
You did, just looking cool sitting there.
Yeah, this was at one of the camps. Oh
my God.
It rained one day and the sun came up, and I was able to capture this rainbow. It was really beautiful.
Breathtaking. That just took my breath away. It doesn't make it look real. It looks
like I know. It looks photoshopped, but it's actually real. That was a real thing.
Oh my gosh. Gorgeous.
So this was the view from the close to the summit of the mountain. So this is a different structure. What you're looking at is actually not Mount Kilimanjaro, but the view from Mount Kilimanjaro.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was gorgeous. This was on summit day, and I had already been climbing for, I think, about 8 hours. And this was the sunrise. It was beautiful. It was so gorgeous, but I was so tired by that point that I couldn't appreciate this view. So when I look at this picture now, I'm glad I took it so that I have something to remember that moment by. But when I was in that place at that time, I was somewhere else because I was really coping.
I'm glad you took it too, because when you do look at it, it will bring you back to that place. So and you were there. So that's, you still have that experience in you, even though you were kind of probably out of your body at that point.
I was. This was at the end of the trip when we were given certificates for completing the climb. But this was the most challenging part of it. I think this might have been day 4 or 5. So we reached a part of the climb called, I think it's called, is it Bronco Wall?
I think something like that. I remember you saying.
Yeah.
That.
So there's this wall, right? And when you look at it from a distance, it just looks flat. Like you look at it from a distance, you're like, wait, people are actually climbing that? How is that even possible? But then when it came time for me to climb it, I understood, oh, you have to do these crazy things where you're in a precarious position. And I had not anticipated it being this intense.
Well, and this is the very thing that you were afraid of, like what happens if I fall? And it was a very real thing.
It was.
This is where our adrenaline gets going, and we are like, okay, I'm going to keep myself safe by doing what I need to do. And you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing too is that, we were doing this for 8 days. And this part of the trek really was only like maybe 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I experienced this really scary thing for a really, really short period of time. And it wasn't the entire time that I was there.
Right.
So I just took a deep breath and I was like, I don't want to hear anybody say anything to me. I just have to do this. The only person who should be.
Yeah, you went focused, you went inwards, and you just did it. Yeah.
I was like, if I look over there, I'm gonna fall. So I'm just gonna focus on this thing that's right in front of me and do it.
And that's a good metaphor for life. Focus on what's in front of you and just do it. And don't worry about what's behind you, what's ahead of you, just what's right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
And hug that wall, kiss that wall.
I do. I hugged it with my whole life.
That's a great picture.
Thank you. So we finished with that, and I think this was in one of the early days, but just me looking at the landscape and another shot of the summit of the mountain behind.
That's where you were.
Yeah. So.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I just love that. And I just love and appreciate you for coming on and sharing. So just some final thoughts. What's the one thing that you are so glad you brought, like that was indispensable, that was so handy? You're like, oh my gosh, thank God I brought this with me.
Probably my walking sticks. Those were very, very useful. I'm actually glad I started using walking sticks early on in my training, because I would find hiking trails here in Los Angeles, and I made it my goal to every weekend go to a different one. But the first time I did that, my knees started to my knees were really feeling it. And I thought, gosh, what can I do to help relieve some of this tension so I'm not putting all of that pressure on my knees? And I noticed people walking around with sticks. And I said, you know what? Even if I look like an old person, I don't care. I'm just going to get these sticks. And they were extremely useful. So that and lip gloss.
Lip gloss. Okay.
Yeah. Because your lips get dry. And
probably even better. I mean, I make my own lip balm. which is really easy. And actually, I think I'm going to do a video soon on how to do it because it is really easy. And I also put SPF in my lip balm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because even though it might be cold, that sun is right there, and that drying and the burning of the lips. So I agree with you. I can't be without my lip balm. And what's the one thing that you didn't have that you wish that you had with you that you think you might, it might have been helpful?
More heating packs.
Hmm.
Because you have these portable things
Yes.
that you can buy and you put them in your gloves and in your shoes and in your,
Yes.
shirts.
Yes.
I should have brought like 10 pounds of those.
Okay.
But the thing is that you are quite limited in the amount of things that you can bring with you because there's a weight limit.
Yeah.
And so we were only allowed to bring 30 pounds of like your clothes, all of your gear, including your sleeping bag. So we had a very limited, so I brought a few heating packs, but I feel like if I had brought maybe one or two less outfits and just recycled those and brought more heating packs, it would have been tremendously helpful, especially at night when I was sleeping and it was so cold.
Yeah. Yes.
More heating packs would have been good.
I agree. When we went to China one year before we went down to Thailand, so this is, December, January, and it was below zero. I mean, it was freezing. And look, you guys, even though I live in LA now, I grew up in Connecticut, I went to school in Vermont, I lived in London, I did my time in the cold, and I do know what cold is. So even though I might complain here. But I bought those little heating things for my hands, my feet, and my belly. And I bought some for my family too. And my sons were like, we don't need those. And they were like, I'm cold. Like I had to give one of my hand ones to my son. I just switched it between. Yeah. And so we stopped back in China before we went back home. We had another long layover in Beijing. I'm like, you guys want some heating pads by any chance? Like, yeah. So they do come in very much in handy for anybody who is going to a cold climate. So that's really good advice. Any other advice that you have for somebody who is thinking about doing Kilimanjaro besides just do it? Anything else?
Besides just do it, it's not as bad as you think.
Good.
So all you need is a little courage and trust. And they have people there who are there to take care of you. Trust me, like you will never find yourself in the middle of, the desert all by yourself. Because sometimes it feels that way where you go miles and you don't see anybody besides the people in your group. Then there's certain places you go to where a bunch of different hiking groups converge. And so then you realize, oh, we're not the only people on this massive mountain by ourselves, but there are plenty of people there to look out for you, to take care of you. If you're at all nervous about your physical comfort and physical danger and health, people were monitoring our blood oxygen every day, twice a day. They would check us in the morning and the evening to see if we're breathing properly. And if we weren't, then we would have to stay, and not continue the climb. And you mentioned earlier, an oxygen tank was available, even though we never needed to use it. But they've been doing this for many years, so they really.
You're not going at it alone. You've got support there. You've got people taking care of you. So it's not this, I don't know. You don't have to know. You just show up and climb it. Just do it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Any other last insights? Anything that you found sort of emotionally or spiritually, like was there anything that you want to share like that came out of doing this, overcoming your fears sort of thing?
Well, I think we, especially in America, I mean, we live in an environment where we compare ourselves to others. And if you're somebody who has a presence on social media and you're like constantly getting bombarded with, images of people living their best lives, and all of that is an illusion because we're only always going to present the good stuff that's happening, when most of the time there's a lot of bad things that are happening to us that we just don't want to share. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is that sometimes you have to step away from that and go inside and really look around and make that decision for yourself. I didn't really tell anybody that I was going to have to do the strip because I knew what people's judgments would be. And so I took responsibility for myself and for my decision. I said, I don't need anybody's approval. I don't need validation from anybody. And I don't need to broadcast it to the world to prove anything. And so I just did it with my friends, did it quietly, came back, and then I shared my experience. And that to me was very satisfying. And I think it was the best way to go about it. So yeah, just listen to yourself and listen to your gut and trust yourself a little more and stop comparing yourself to other people. Your mission is your own.
Such wise words.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So this was your personal journey. This
it
wasn't
was.
for show. This wasn't for anybody else. This was for you.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. People need to start doing things for themselves without worrying what anybody else is going to think.
Mhm.
They want to do it, do it. You don't need anybody's permission, approval. Um, Everybody's on their own journey.
Yeah.
People, you're going to have people who are with you, people that aren't. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And people will always react based on where they're at. And so whatever their reaction is based, they're projecting their fears, their insecurities, their hopes, their dreams, their whatever it is, it's not yours. So to me, it just felt like I'm not gonna waste time doing that. I know what I want to do, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do it
Yeah.
and be confident in that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just so amazing. Oh my gosh. I
And
am.
thank you for your support. I feel like I've been a handful for you this past year. Like I feel like I come to you sometimes and I'm like, I feel like I'm doing the most, and you're always talking me off the ledge. And so when I go into your practice, I'm like, and then when I come out, I'm like, you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
Feel
And can I just tell you though, okay, first of all, having 3 children prepared me for anything, but I absolutely get the most joy when people come in and they're like, freaking out, and I'm able to have things, tools for them
yeah.
to be able to get back to where, I know they really want to be. That gives me such joy. So it's mutual, believe you me, because this is my passion and my dharma is to help people out. So you give me a great chance to do that. And it would get boring for me if everybody just came in, yeah, just give me the usual. I mean, it's fine. I love doing it. But when somebody comes in with something, challenging, I'm like, all right.
What can we do?
Hey, so yeah, you never have to feel like you are overwhelming me because that's almost pretty impossible. Nobody's broken me yet.
Good. You're
All
pretty
right.
resilient, so I
Oh,
appreciate it.
oh my gosh. Well, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. And I know that this is going to help inspire someone else to break out of their comfort zone. And yeah, thanks for sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. I'm going to sign off with you, and I will see you next time.